Hi, this is Krys from Hitchhiker's Guide to Humanity, and I am here with Roni and Maureen again. We are going to be talking today about the northern Kenyan tribes. In particular, we'll talk about the Kalenjins as well. So let's just go ahead and start with the Kalenjins and some background information on them, Roni.
Kalenjins are one of the tribes in Kenya. They are really the people who are really particular about their cultures. They hold their cultures very dear, and they are one of these communities which have been having conflicts within each other and with other tribes in the country. They have a history of a lot of tribal conflicts, killing each other, cattle rustling issues. Yeah, in Kenya.
Cattle rustling, that sounds awfully familiar being from Texas myself. So are these like internal tribal conflicts, or are they starting problems with other tribes?
There are internal tribal conflicts, and we have I think it was sometime in the 90s that there were in the Molo area of Kenya, they started conflicts with another tribe over land issues. The Kalenjins fighting the Kikuyus over land issues. So mostly it's within their own tribe, conflicts within their own different sub-tribes in the Kalenjin. Maureen, correct me if I'm wrong. The overall tribe is the Kalenjin, and within the Kalenjins, there are different sub-tribes within the Kalenjin community, right?
True.
Yeah.
It's a big tribe, but it has some small tribes inside, sub tribes inside it.
Yeah, so sometimes the conflicts are within those small sub-tribes, and sometimes it's with other communities which live around where these communities also live. So mostly the conflicts are about lands and cattle rustling issues, and yeah, things like that.
So then that's kind of very interesting to me, because so it's not everyone in the tribe that's fighting. It's very specific subgroups in the tribe that are fighting amongst each other.
Yeah, it's not everyone in the tribe that's fighting each other, or it's not like a full out countrywide war between the Kalenjin community, or between Kalenjins and other people like one of the most pronounced countrywide fights which involved these communities was the 2007-2008 post-election violence, where the Kalenjins, Kikuyus, Luos were like fighting each other a lot. But most of these other ones are small ones, just localized in one specific area. You find this community of the Kalenjins and this subtribe of other Kalenjins. They're fighting over cattle, they're fighting over land, and yeah, just small localized communities.
So then, overall, I hadn't actually heard of the Kalenjin tribe very much, except for the fact that they're called the running tribe.
Yeah.
And so, can you kind of briefly talk about why they're called the running tribe?
When you Kenya is known for winning marathons, so those people, the Kipchoge Keinos of Kenya, they are from the Nandi region, the Kalenjin region of Kenya. They are not Kikuyus, they are not Luos. They are the people who are known for that skill of running. They're the people who you see win all these marathons around the world. So that is why they are known as the running people of Kenya. Those are the people who run in these marathons. It is their thing as a community. I think I read somewhere that it has something to do with the region where they live. It gives them, I'm not a science person, I don't understand it very well. It gives them a lung capacity or something of the sort, the region where they are from. So that is why they can run and a lot and run fast and run very long marathons.
Yeah,
I think so.
I was reading a little bit up on it, and it talked about how there were two kind of biological slash location advantages that the Kalenjins have in foot races, and one of them is that they biologically have thinner legs than other groups of human beings. And the one which you mentioned was their location, because they live at a higher altitude. Their lung
Yeah.
capacity is increased. So I'm assuming it's similar to like if you had Tibetan monks training for a marathon, they would do better than people in India or people in China, just because they have that increased lung capacity from living in the mountains. So and Kenya kind of has it really, Kenya in landscape reminds me a lot of the variety that Texas has, because you have mountains there, you have valleys, you have beachfront property, you have deserts, you have savannas. And so basically you have a lot of different climates and biomes all within one nation, very similar to how Texas has all of those things as well. So it's not surprising at all the variety of cultures and people that come out of those, because depending on where you live, if you're a mountain tribe versus a valley tribe, you're going to have a lot of differences on how you view the world. So what is the Kalenjin view of the world? What is their perception of their place in it, their place in Kenyan affairs, Kenyan culture, and their place in the larger human culture?
Kalenjins, like I said, they're extremely traditional people, but we also see them a lot in leadership. President Moi, the second president of Kenya, was among one of those Kalenjin sub tribes that we have. So they have a leadership place in Kenyan community. That is why when this election things come out, and the election wars and the election killings, they are one of the people who are on the forefront of it. The Kikuyus, the Kalenjins, the Luos, because they have that leadership roles or potentials in the country. So they associate themselves with their cultural identity a lot, and once you don't ascribe to such cultures, they look at you as an outcast or as an outsider in their community. Yeah, something of the sort.
Well, and the other thing, I'm kind of just like picking up little things on the internet about them as we go through this. And one thing I found out is that they're also heavily involved in science and medicine, along with tradition. So they're not only just following solely traditional practices, they're also incorporating a lot of science that they themselves discovered throughout the centuries. You know, a lot of times we in Western culture, oh, it's this white guy that discovered this thing, and in fact, it's actually someone from the other side of the world that discovered it centuries, if not millennia, before, and we're just rediscovering it in the West. So, are they considered kind of like the science tribe as well, the tribe that understands how to heal the body in comparison to other tribes?
I think that falls more on the Maasai people, because these traditional herbs that people that most African countries use to treat a lot of ailments, the Maasais are known to have drugs for almost everything. So when it comes to traditional medicine, you find people mostly going the Maasai way. Maureen, can you help me out on this? I think, yeah.
Okay, let me clarify. The Kalenjins are strong on their cultures, but when it comes to medicinal part, the Maasai are vast in the knowledge of healing, the right drugs to use. But when it comes to medicinal, the sub tribes, their culture is what protects them from. We can say they're strong on their cultures and their food, the types of food that they eat. That is what is making them look like they are more vast in the herbal department. But it's just that Maasais, anytime you want any medicine for most of the ailments that are in Kenya, you go to a Maasai. They know exact herb that you will use. But Kalenjins will put them Mostly I can talk of Nandis because Nandis are, we can say they are more culturalist, and then they eat more of traditional meals and take a lot of herbs. Not all of them. All the sub-tribes in Kalenjins have their own strengths. So every sub-tribe have their own avenue. But if you say medicinal, we'll say Maasais.
Yeah.
Interesting. So then, just to clarify, the Nandi is like a subgroup of the Kalenjin tribe.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And so those are the ones that are kind of seen as the keepers of this ancient knowledge. Now, I'd like to talk about the herbal thing just for a minute because there's a lot of like manufactured drugs in Western culture that come with a whole slew of side effects. When you take the medicine to cure the one ailment, you also have to take 5 more to cure all the side effects from it. Whereas traditional medicine from Africa, even from South America, from Asia, we're finding has a lot of science behind it. And this reminds me of something from breast cancer research. There were a team of scientists, Western scientists, who went into South America, into the Amazon, and they asked the local medicine men there, what do you do when the women in your tribe come to you with lumps on their breasts? How do you heal that? How do you cure that? And the medicine men there gave them this herb and said, this is what we give them, and it works. And that was actually used to create a Western medicine derived from this herb that they found in South America. That has been a really good treatment for breast cancer, one of the best treatments for breast cancer, and it actually ended up resulting in a much better cure rate overall when this herb was used in medicine. So I think we have a lot to learn as Westerners from the tribal medicine, because these aren't just some magical herbs, and people aren't just like shaking incense over you and saying magic words. No, it's actually scientifically proven that this stuff does work on these particular ailments, and which makes perfect sense because over the centuries this tradition has been passed down, and people get curious and they try new things to fix the ailments that they have, and eventually they start learning about that. So I feel like science actually began in Africa, studying these herbs. Would you agree with that? Do you see a lot of herbal medicine that actually cures better than Western medicine?
Africans are like very big believers in traditional medicine. A lot of times when you find people with these chronic ailments, the cancers and the likes, you find them going into the traditional remedies when the Western ways have failed. There are some communities which do not believe in Western medicine at all, but there are also people very well about the Western medicine, but still you find them trying out the traditional medicines. My sister has been having this like chronic pain for a very long time. So we've tried everything on the Western front, and it failed. We are trying everything on the traditional way also, but also along the way you meet a lot of scammers nowadays, because they are aware of how people trust and believe in herbal remedies, as opposed to, or in addition to, the Western medicine. So you find a lot of people advertising that they treat cancer, they treat high blood pressure, they treat all these chronic ailments. And when you go to them, they give you just herbs they've picked here and there. So it has also brought out a lot of scammers in Africa on the traditional medicine front.
Yeah, and I think that Westerners listening need to remember that this happens all the time in the West too. Most recently with the coronavirus, I've seen lots of things, lots of posts saying, "Oh, this will cure you of coronavirus,"
Yeah.
or "This will prevent coronavirus," and they're coming from Western ideal mindsets. They're drink lemon juice and you won't get coronavirus. Just ridiculous things like that, or even from our president, drink bleach and it'll cure coronavirus. So. I'm hoping that I can explain to the Western audience here that this is not something to go ha ha. Look at the traditional peoples that they still follow these silly old practices. No, we all do it all over the world. There are people that are going to try to scam you, and there are people that are gullible enough to fall for it, and that doesn't just reside in cultures where that are not Western, or that it also happens in Western culture constantly. We are constantly being marketed to for the latest diet fad, popcorn diet or South Beach diet or keto diet, instead of actually like properly looking at how nutrition works. And with the simplest thing to do to lose weight is to eat a lot of fruit and vegetables and cut out the rest. That's just common sense. So yeah, I think as Westerners we need to very much keep in mind that these are universal things that happen and not just things that happen in Africa or in Chinese medicine or in South American medicine. It's all over the world. Moving on from the Kalenjins though, let's go ahead and talk about the North Kenyan tribes and how they're different from or similar to other tribes in Kenya.
They're mostly similar to the Kalenjin communities. They're not so different from them. They only in terms of how they hold their cultures dear to them, how the cattle issues bring a lot of conflict, and land issue also bring a lot of conflicts to them. So I put them together, the Kalenjins and the Northeastern, because they're so similar to each other.
So that's really interesting. Now, going even further north from Kenya, we talked a lot. We talked some about the tribes that have and I'm going to completely mispronounce this because I can't do that clicking sound that's involved with the name of is it Xhosa tribe in the south, in South Africa?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I can't do the clicking thing that's supposed to be present before it, because I haven't been taught how to do that. But I am a huge fan of Trevor Noah, who is from South Africa, and of course I've studied Nelson Mandela and some of the history of apartheid and oppression in South Africa. And I really do kind of just find the whole idea of adding these specific noises that you don't hear in Western languages and how it can change the words. But moving on to the North African tribes, those tribes seem to be like completely not only different in beliefs and values, but completely different in look. They appear to be more Middle Eastern than African. Is that the case, or are these still considered? Are these considered Middle Eastern tribes, or are they considered part of the body of African tribes?
I think they're considered part of the body of African tribes.
Interesting. And then, so what are the differences in the beliefs of people in North Africa compared to people in East, West, and South Africa?
I have not really studied a lot of North African tribal patterns, but from what I see or from what I hear of them, they are also really traditional people. You see, they're the ones who have the rings on their tongues and things like that, and that kind of dialects that they have. That is not something that is predominant in the eastern parts of Africa.
All right, so yeah, that's going to probably have to be like a whole other topic that we delve into,
Yeah.
and maybe we can find someone from like the Berber tribe or something to add into that conversation, because I would love to delve deeper into all the different regions of Africa. The one that I've actually kind of sparked my interest in Africa originally were Congolese tribes. And the reason for that was because I read a book called the Poisonwood Bible, which takes place in that region in the 1950s through the 1980s. It's about a family of missionaries with 4 children, white missionaries, coming in, and they were there to convert all the heathen African tribes in the story. You have to remember this is written from that point of view of the 1950s white Christian savior kind of mentality towards Africa. And in the story, the girl, one of the middle daughters, falls in love with the local African, and that was kind of the way that African was described in that book, like actually started really drawing my interest into Africa, because it was the first time I had ever read a description of an African man in a romantic way, from the perspective of a Western white girl. And the way she described him was just absolutely beautiful. And he's covered in these scars. He practices scarification, so there's these tiny, fine white lines scratched through his face, and he's got scars on his back and his body. And that was recently again popularized in the movie Black Panther, because their scarification practiced by the villain in that movie. For every kill he has, he scars himself. But I do find the idea of scarification fascinating. So would that be something that we could discuss, or is that something that is practiced in Kenyan tribes, scarification?
Is not practiced in any of the Kenyan tribes that I know of. Maureen, do you know of any scarification in any Kenyan tribe? I don't think it is.
Just from our brothers from Sudan, but not in Kenya. The brothers from Sudan, they do scarification. It's like beautifying someone.
Yeah, that's the way I saw it too. And when I started looking up pictures on the internet of traditional scarification practices, I became fascinated with it. To me, it's like tattooing. So hopefully one day we can have a conversation about that. Maybe we can find someone from Sudan or from Congo that practices scarification and bring them into that conversation, because I would love to hear that aspect as well. But this has been a really... Go ahead.
But it's mostly the only country that I think still practices it. I don't know if it's dying, but it's Sudan. Sudan is the one that is still holding that kind of culture in some areas.
Well, the interesting thing is it's also being picked up by Western cultures now. I have seen, it's rare, but I still see people in Western culture actively practicing scarification. And I think that's a fascinating topic to delve into, because it also it relates back to Western tattooing and the way we modify our own bodies in Western culture. So that will be a fascinating topic to delve into. But I've had so much fun just kind of going over the different tribes and the different regions with you both. Thank you so much for sharing this knowledge with us and with our listeners. And listeners, if you have anything that you want to hear about what's some strange thing that you've heard about from African cultures that you would like to delve into and see how it's related to Western culture, we'd be happy to explore those topics further for you. But I want to thank Roni and Maureen for coming in today and for talking to us about a variety of topics with African tribes. And Roni, would you like to go ahead and give a quick introduction of what we'll be talking about next week?
Next week, we'll be talking about Christianity and religion in Africa, voodoo, black magic issues in Africa, tribal religions, if they're still being practiced in Kenya, the impacts of missionary teachings in Africa and in Kenya, and how that has impacted religion and culture and life as it is today in Kenya and in Africa.
I think we'll find a lot of similarities with the evolvement of religion over time in Africa to the evolvement of religion over time in America. So that's going to be a very fascinating conversation. And thank you both for joining me today, and we will see you all again next week.
Bye.
Bye.